I got these from my husband like a couple Valentine's days ago. I'd say it's time we finally use them. This video is not sponsored by any of the companies mentioned. If you've been watching my channel recently, then you know I've really been getting into watercolors lately, and I have a bunch of different sets of watercolors that I've bought or had bought for me that I haven't had the chance to use on the channel yet. Some of them have been sitting in the studio for a little while. And that's the case with this one. I have had this set for like 2 years. This is the Mijello Mission Gold Pure Pigment set. I had this on my wish list for a long time. My husband bought it for me a long time ago, and now we're finally using them. I don't know why it's taken so long. I was super excited about this set. And in the spirit of using things that I've had laying around for a long time, just like my recent video where I painted a starfish today, I am going to use a reference photo that I took years ago because let's just, start using the things that we've had laying around. So anyways, we're going to take a look at these paints. I am going to pull out an old reference photo and I'm going to get a feel for these and tell you how I feel about them. Let's just get to it. Let's take a look at this beautiful set. This is the Mijello Mission Gold Pure Pigment set. It has 24 tubes that are 15 ml and then 2 colors that are 7 ml. It is so gorgeous. On the back, you can see all the colors, and it has the light fast information as well as the pigment information. We have Chinese white, lemon yellow, permanent yellow light, permanent yellow deep, autumn orange, permanent red deep, rose madder, quinacridone permanent rose, quinacridone permanent magenta, quinacridone violet, dioxazine violet, cobalt blue, cerulean blue, phthalocyanin blue, ultramarine light, cobalt turquoise, viridian, bamboo green, cobalt green deep, green gold, yellow ochre, burnt sienna, red brown, Van Dyke brown, and ivory black. And as you can see, they all have between a 4 and a 5 light fast rating, other than the dioxazine violet, which only has 3. So these have incredible light fast ratings. I'm really impressed by that, and I'm super excited about that already. Let's take a look inside this lovely box at all the beautiful tubes in there. They have beautiful branding, and then they have more information on the inside of the cover as well. They talk about color uniformity, non-toxic and non-chemical additives, and cadmium-free cosmetic-grade preservatives. So that's fantastic as well. It looks like they really took care to make sure that they are creating a beautiful and safer product for people to work with. And then it has this little mesh thing on the top with their branding. Look at this. More information with different languages, which is fantastic. These are made in South Korea, so it is nice that they have marketed for other areas of the world as well. And then we have the pamphlet here that talks about the pigments that they use. It also gives more information on the inside about the colors and the light fastness, transparency, all that jazz. The light fastness key, the transparency key, talks about the staining, gives you all the information that you would want to know as a professional watercolor artist who likes to sell their work. And even the back is gold. It's just so pretty. I can't get over how well they have done on their branding, especially since they're really, not too heavily priced. So I do have a couple of the smaller tubes here. I think these are the 7 ml tubes. One of them is ivory black and then the other one is white. But as you can tell, they put all the same kind of information on the tubes themselves. So it has the color name, their branding, the light fastness, all of the good stuff, and the seal of approval for safety standards in the United States. Look at that gold tube. These just feel so like a treasure. They feel like such a treasure to me. I can't get over it. Sorry, I'm gushing a little bit. This is their Chinese white. Same kind of information. I'm not usually huge on having a white paint in a watercolor set, so I'm going to be curious to see how well this one works. Typically, if I'm going for some kind of opaque white, I pull in a gouache. So now that we have taken a peek at these beautiful tubes, I am going to set up a palette with them, because I like to use mine in pans. And how I normally do that is I write all the information on each pan, basically the color name and the pigment information and the light fastness. That's what I write on my pans. I use a marker that is waterproof to do that. And then I just come in and I squirt them in my pans and then I let them dry before I use them. So I'm going to do that with all the colors. Here is the palette all put together now that they've dried out. There's been a couple colors that shrunk a little bit, but not too bad. They filled pretty well. And I gotta tell you, I did have an issue. Some of the colors had separated because, as I mentioned before, I've had this set for a while before using it. So that was kind of my fault. Some of the colors had separated, but they mixed in the pan just fine and set up just fine. So just a little bit of cracking and a little bit of shrinkage, but not too bad. I'm pretty impressed with that so far. Now I am going to swatch this out. Look at those beautiful, vibrant colors. Sorry, for the first part of my footage, it was kind of blurry, so I just cut that part out. That's why you're not seeing the whole thing being swatched. But now I'm coming in and swatching the rest of them. Look at these gorgeous colors. They are so bright and so pigmented already right off the bat. I was so excited when I swatched these, and truth be told, I swatched these out a while ago. Like, I swatched these and put this palette together a while before I got the chance to use it. So I had this set sitting in my studio for a year or two before I made the palette, and then it was a few months before I got the chance to actually use the palette. I laid down a black line there so we could kind of get an idea of how opaque that white is, and I wasn't too disappointed for a white that's coming out of a watercolor set. I mean, it's not the best. I don't expect it to be gouache quality. And then I put my dioxazine violet kind of out of order because that was the one with the least amount of light fastness, so that I can use the other ones easily in work I want to sell. And then if I want to use that one for sketchbook work, it's still there. But I put it off to the end just to separate it out a little bit. But this is what the swatch looks like. And I put the light fast information, that's what the numbers are in the swatches themselves, and I wrote down all of the names. Now we are going to finally get to the piece. Now, I gotta tell you folks, I took this reference photo years and years and years ago. This is another one that I have been wanting to paint forever. And I finally was like, you know what? After the starfish, I'm going to start painting some of my older reference photos. I sat down, I sketched this little beauty out real quick. I used a colored mechanical pencil for that. I will link that and everything else in the description below. And I am working on Arches cold press paper for this one because that was a paper that I've had sitting around in the studio for a little while and I haven't used it in a while. I've been using my Legion Stonehenge Aqua a lot lately, and so I wanted to kind of play around with the arches again. And it worked great. Right off the bat, I am already impressed with how well these colors re-wet, and I'm very impressed with the pigment payout. I can't believe how beautiful it is right in the initial washes. Now you're gonna have that, since these are single pigment tubes, they're going to be more pure, like right off the bat, because anytime you mix your colors, you have more and more of a chance of them being muddy. Now, that being said, I mix colors a lot here. Using colors that have fewer pigments in them to begin with, such as this set with the single pigments, makes it easier to get more beautiful, vibrant mixes as well. Because if you're already working with a paint that has like 3 pigments in it, and then you mix it with another paint that has 2 pigments in it, you're going to have more of a chance of it being muddy. However, each of these only have a single pigment in them, so you're just starting off good to begin with. So the colors mixed great, long story short, but they were beautiful right out of the pan as well. I love that. I like a lot of saturation in my watercolors, and I like to also be able to build up with my watercolors to create more saturation. So I'm going to do that as well. But it was a good starting point to begin with. Now I'm coming in and just laying in some of the colors on my bird. I love this little guy. I am a crazy bird lady. I love painting and drawing birds, but I also love to photograph them. As you all may know, I typically work from my own reference photos. So I was on a kick. We had a feeder out there, and a hummingbird feeder out in the front yard, and I was on a kick all summer. One summer, I would just sit out there with my DSLR and try to capture like the perfect pictures. And one of my goals was to get a perfect freeze frame where you could actually see the details on the wings. And the reference photo that I used for this was one of those photos I got from that time. I was so excited when I snapped the photo. I I was ecstatic. It was just one of those things. It was like a bucket list item for me as a photographer slash artist. It's not my best composition. I didn't have a lot of time to, compose the picture. So I wish the bird had a little bit more space, but the bird was the main event. Yeah, I have had this reference photo for a long time and I've looked at it for a long time. I changed the background up to create a little bit more visual interest than what was there in the original reference photo. So I wanted to create more of a dappled effect, and you'll see me come in and fix up that background a little bit more, but I wanted that to dry in areas before I did that. So then I started working on the bird. So you'll see me go back and forth between the bird and the background, especially around the edges of the bird. That's just how that's how it goes. You're going to have to clean up edges. And sometimes that can be a little bit more difficult in watercolors, but the more you work with watercolors, the more you get used to water control and fixing your own mistakes and cleaning up your own messes, so to speak. And a lot of that has to do with cleaning up your edges. And there are different tips and tricks that you can do. I like to come through with a clean brush to clean up the areas that need to be a little bit lighter. But for areas that are, in the background a little bit, I like to just blend things out a little bit with a clean brush as well. And that's one of those things that can be a little bit tricky at times, because if you have too much water on your brush, it can create a bigger mess. So it really just comes down to practice, practice, practice. You want to practice with the amount of paint you have on your brush. You want to practice with the amount of water that you have on your brush. And you get used to it after a while. But sometimes it's just easier to lift. And in areas of that beak, you're going to see me correcting quite a bit around that edge. I actually mixed a green mixture with my white. And you'll see me come in later and blend that out. It's a little bit janky right now, but she'll get blended out a little bit later. It really is a dance. There's an ebb and a flow, and you go back and forth between your initial layers and cleaning things up. And I don't know. I just love it. It's so much fun. Watercolor is so much fun to deal with. It can be a challenge, especially for somebody like me who likes high detail. But as with anything else, I just layer and layer, and I work messy to neat, and I clean things up as I go along. And these paints were no exception for that. I was able to do all of that and more with the layering, with the glazing, with finer details. And all in all, it was a fantastic time. And I'm super, super happy that I finally painted this reference photo. I've had this reference photo for like 7 years. I took it in 2018. And it's crazy how I'll get so excited about a reference photo and then not use it for years and years. And I think I don't always know how I want to approach my favorite references. And it was the same with my recent starfish. You heard me talk about that in that video. But the paints did exactly what I needed them to do. I am highly impressed, and I'm definitely going to be using these a lot more. I think these are going to be one of my top favorite paints, honestly. I can't wait to do more with them. They layered well. I was able to lift in places I needed. Again, different pigments are going to have different staining power, so some of them are going to be harder to lift than others. But for the most part, when I needed to correct things, I was able to do that. I was actually pretty impressed with the white as far as a white watercolor goes. As I mentioned, I'm somebody who likes a good bleed-proof white by Dr. P.H. Martin's or a gouache, but this white actually handled things pretty well for a white watercolor. It's not going to be the most opaque because it's watercolor, but it worked fairly well for what I needed it to do, and I was able to correct things with it later on if I needed to, and create some highlights. Now, it goes on lighter when it first comes out of the pan, and then as it dries, it darkens. It's kind of opposite of what regular watercolors do. Like normally watercolors go on a little bit more saturated and then dry lighter. The white is a little bit opposite, so I will come back in numerous times and add highlights in areas that I need to. But all in all, I was pretty impressed by that. And all the colors worked beautifully together. As I mentioned, they mixed well. They had fun playing in the water with each other. And I was also able to get the detail I needed as well. So I just used a little bit less water in the areas where I needed higher detail and a thinner brush. And I came through and added in those feathers. I'm paying close attention to the direction of the feathers and curving my lines in the direction that they need to go. And they are so beautiful and colorful. They have so many of these like iridescent blue-green effects on their feathers. So that was something that I wanted to pay close attention to as well, especially on the back of the bird and on the head. There were some areas where I left them quite lighter because I wanted it to look like the sun was reflecting off those shiny feathers. That beak is something that I had to go back and forth on a lot. And then this wing, you're going to see me go back and forth and fix that wing a lot because it was a pretty quick sketch. I was able to sketch it out fairly quickly free-handed because I've looked at this reference so much, but as I was working, there were places where I neatened things up and changed the shape of things just a little bit more to be more accurate as I went along. Now, normally I don't do that. A lot of times I will sketch on a separate piece of paper. This was just one of those days where I'm like, I just have the urge to play. I want to go to the art studio and I want to play with some art supplies. I'm going to play with some new art supplies that I've had sitting around for a while. I wasn't even sure what I was going to paint when I first sat down. I opened up my computer, went through some of my reference photos and saw this little hummingbird. I'm like, oh, all right, just started sketching and went with it. But a lot of times I will plan things out better than that. And when I do, I like to draw on a separate piece of paper so that I don't ruin my paper from erasing. I just got brave this time and it happened to work out. It paid off. I didn't end up having to waste this piece of arches. I don't know why I decided to get brave on some arches, but it ended up working in my favor. And some of that pink pencil shows through in areas. I kind of like that look, honestly, especially around the eye and stuff like that. As per usual, I worked very loosely and then I tightened things up as I went along. But you don't have to do things as tightly as I do things. You can go loosey-goosey with your watercolors. That's what's so beautiful about watercolors. So as you can see, I'm going in now with that white and neatening things up. And it had a little bit of a highlight around the edges of it anyways, where the sun was hitting. So I was able to use the white for that. And in some of the areas, I came back over with a yellow because it was a warm light that was hitting the bird. And I was able to layer over the white pretty well without it lifting too much underneath. Then I decided I wanted to kind of do a little bit of a vignette, so I'm doing a darker green around the edges, hoping that it will help make the bird pop even more. And I think it worked out pretty well. And I'm not being too crazy about it. I'm letting the colors flow together. I'm letting little things bloom here and there because it is a bokeh background, so it kind of lends itself to that effect really well. I love watercolor for bokeh backgrounds, honestly. Here's the scan. I love this so much. I think it came out great. It's just a little 5x7, but I gotta tell you, I thoroughly enjoyed these paints. I think they definitely live up to their reputation. They are vibrant. They re-wet well. They are definitely very purely pigmented, and I am just so excited about this set. I can't believe it took me so long to try it. You will see more videos with this set in the future. Prints of this are available on my website. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you've tried these paints, and if so, did you like them? Because I absolutely love them. And let me know what you think of my little hummingbird painting. I'm pretty proud of it. I'm pretty happy with it for such a quick little painting. All right, thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time. You have a fantastic day. Bye.